there's a bit of news. And that news involves one of the members of the Knicks front office. That would be one Scott Perry. So I think The Athletic broke the news, Shams, and this was confirmed by Ian Begley. Contract extension for Scott Perry, multiple seasons, and he's going to stick on in his role as the general manager of the New York Knicks. I've been. This is tough because I think it was it about a year ago? Might have been about a year ago. I don't know. Less, more, who could tell? It's all running together. I went on, I think, a bit of a rant when it was revealed that Scott Perry was going to be coming back under Leon Rose and that he was going to stay on as the team's GM. Mostly because I thought it was a missed opportunity. I thought there were a lot of really talented, young, maybe more analytically based minds out there in the league. And that if you dangled the carrot of Knicks general manager, you might be able to get one of those folks on board, even though it would not be in a lead decision-making role. Because obviously, that has been something that is Leon Rose's department, as has been reported. Everybody gets to make their input, and Leon makes the final call. And I think over the course of the last year, or whatever it's been, my stance on Scott Perry has softened for two reasons. One, purely based on the situation that I just described. He is a voice with the New York Knicks. He is not the voice for the New York Knicks. And I think, throughout his career, Scott Perry has, and again, this was all reported when he was originally hired here, nobody had a bad thing to say about him, knows what he's doing. I mean, I've reported, I think, over the last couple of years that even people who maybe had reason not to like him were impressed by his ability to, put systems in place, maintain those systems, very organized, obviously professional, all of those things. And I just, the knock on Perry, I think, has always been that he might not be, the best evaluator of talent. And I think if you want to take it a step further, and if you want to look at okay, well, how is he being the final say? And look, we don't know whether Scott Perry ever had final say here because he was with Steve Mills or since then he's obviously been with Leon Rose. So in terms of the decision to bring aboard David Fizdale, the decision to, build the 2019-20 roster in the way that it was built. And look, Fizdale's a large part to blame for that. I also just don't think that roster made a ton of sense. I think we could point to guys like Bobby Portis and Julius Randle this year and Marcus Morris and all these guys having successful, ventures either here or elsewhere. But just the complexion of that team just didn't make a lot of sense. And I really don't. I mean, look, you could say Fizdale's all to blame. Anybody who watched that year, I think, recognizes that, look, even when Mike Miller took over, it was still a team that was whatever they were, 10 games under 500. So, and Perry has to own that. Perry has to own Fizdale to a certain extent. Perry has to certainly own Kevin Knox to an extent. And I would say of all of the things on Scott Perry's record, to take Kevin Knox at the spot that he took him, when literally almost any of the other, I just want to remind myself of the horror show that was the Knox pick. And I like Kevin Knox. I still kind of believe maybe there's a basketball player somewhere within Kevin Knox. But if you look at that draft, and you recognize the fact that the next several picks in order were Mikal Bridges is about to get paid somewhere between $20 and $25 million a year. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander would have solved the Knicks point guard problems, is going to be a day one max guy this summer when he is eligible to get extended. Miles Bridges, who is, a solid player. He's certainly a rotation player in the league. I don't know if he's a starter. I don't know if he's like a backup, but he's a good player. And then there was a miss with Jerome Robinson. And then after that, Michael Porter Jr., who, is he going to be a significant part of a massive trade for a Beal or a Ben Simmons or whoever? Like, who knows? But like those were the next 5 picks. And you could even go a little bit down further than that. After Porter Jr. had Troy Brown Jr., miss. Zaire Smith, thus far, miss. Then Dante DiVincenzo, solid player. Lonnie Walker, solid player. Kevin Huerter, talk about a guy who might get extended for upwards of $20 million a year this offseason. So, we got Kevin Knox. It is what it is. But there's also a lot of positives to Scott Perry's draft record. First of all, anything that has happened since Leon Rose came aboard, Scott Perry is the general manager, and he deserves to get some credit for that. How much credit? I can't sit here and tell you that. But he is a voice in the room. I would also, point to the Mitchell Robinson pick. That is 100% a Scott Perry selection. That pick does not happen with Scott Perry. Without Scott Perry, excuse me. RJ Barrett. He took RJ Barrett. I've been a little cooler than some in terms of how much credit I'm willing to give Scott Perry for the RJ Barrett pick, because it was the obvious pick and but listen, RJ looks awesome. I think, is there a world where he could become, the second best player in this draft long term? Maybe. Might he wind up being the 4th best player in this draft? Not willing to rule that out either. But at the very least, RJ Barrett's a damn good pro with a nice ceiling, and I think we're all happy that we have him. So that goes on Perry's ledger as well. And I think probably at this point, you would have to say that the most important thing that he did, and the most impressive thing that he did, is that he, as my daughter comes in here with a makeup kit, is he signed Julius Randle to what has effectively become one of the most valuable contracts in the league as it stands. Julius Randle is going to be playing for the Knicks. Here you go, Sess. For under $20 million next season. And that's a massive, massive, massive win. I think as much as you can give credit to this season to Tom Thibodeau, Randle, like this year for New York doesn't happen without Randle. And, I'm giving the lion's share of the credit for Randle to Scott Perry. So let's say, it's a mixed bag. He's, again, a voice. And there's the second point that I was going to say earlier, and I'll say now, which is that for this front office, I think, and more than the front office, I think this whole regime, and I'm including Tom Thibodeau in that group, I think for this whole regime, the fact that they get along, the fact that, or at least they seem to get along well enough, at least to be functional. I mean, we've again heard reports of, Tibbs and like Brock Aller maybe being on different sides of the different issues. But even to that end, Scott Perry is a guy who's, again, is known as someone who works really well with a lot of different people. And I think it's important that in a front office where I think you have some strong personalities, whether it be Worldwide Wes, Tom Thibodeau, I don't know, maybe Brock Aller has a strong personality. I have no idea. But like having a guy like Perry who is able to get along well with everybody, I think that's important. He knows how to work with different people. And I think Leon Rose likes having him there, as part of the team. I just, again, am happier knowing that he is not the most of the team or like the whole team or anything along those lines. So, good for Scott Barry. I'm genuinely, I mean this, I'm happy for him. This Knicks season was amazing. He was partially responsible for it. Deserves all the credit in the world. So let's just hope that, there's not a repeat on the Kevin Knox pick anytime soon or anything of that nature. And, onwards and upwards we go.